Hello there, Flip here, and today we're going to be talking about the 6.7 banners. There is a 6-7 joke there, but I'm not going to be the one to say it, whereas the reruns are going to be Columbina, Raiden, and Citlali. So I'll just be discussing how valuable all these characters are in the meta, and if it's worth pulling for them, and then finish the video by discussing how good each character's vertical investment is, and whether to go for signatures or constellations. But before we do that, as always, if at any point during the video you are entertained or informed, make sure to drop a like and even consider subscribing, as I talk on various topics regarding Genshin's meta, and I'll try to keep you updated. Shout out to my lovely channel members, I really appreciate your support, it means the world to me. I haven't seen enough of you guys talk about how consistent my upload schedule has been, but I'll take no offense, don't worry. And let's just get right into it, in which we're going to discuss Sandrone first. I've made 3 videos on Sandrone already, the first breaking down her kit, the second covering her numbers in version 1 which weren't that great, and the third discussing how busted she is. To summarize as briefly as possible, as you can just go watch my other videos on her, Sandrone is a cryo claymore DPS, and the 2 main things that stand out about her is the fact that she enables stellar conduct, and like with lunar reaction, she's able to deal stellar damage directly to enemies with her extremely powerful charge attacks that are balanced around managing any overheat mechanics by using her elemental skill. Despite just being a DPS, there is actually a ton of reasons to want to pull for Sandrone right now, even aside just direct meta reasons. For one, she's the only stellar conduct enabler right now, so if you want to use any of the new characters to their full potential and don't want to wait an entire patch, you can just pull Sandrone for that, especially if you aren't maining the 2 DPSs getting buffed, as Sandrone makes all of the supports and sub DPSs that are getting buffed extremely relevant now, like Chi-Chi, Diona, Beidou, and Yaimiko especially. So if you want to use a team where these characters are actually important, Sandrone is one way to do that. Not only that, but obviously Sandrone is just a very strong character. Go watch my version 2 video for more numbers, but Sandrone's better teams are sitting around the 120k to 130k DPS range, with even full free 4-star teams sitting at around 100k DPS, which is a 30% higher baseline than a Nefa when she was released, on top of being stronger than where Flynn's and Nefer were without Columbina, and placing Sandrone in the Skirk and Movwika tier. And this is with her missing a ton of things like the Cryo Archon, a craftable weapon, a supportive artifact set, and other supports in version 7 that are most likely to help her. So Sandrone is looking to be one of the most independent DPSs we have right now, with her very good numbers and her very flexible teammates, and is going to be a very early way to check any stellar shilling mechanics. And having a DPS already ready for Sneznaya can be a ton of help. So Sandrone is a very powerful DPS that's going to be relevant throughout all of version 7, is very easy to play on top of having a ton of accessible teammates, as well as bringing older, more irrelevant characters to the meta like Yaimiko and Chi-Chi back into the light. So if you have the means to spec into a Sandrone team, I think I would really recommend it actually. The only real exception is if you have someone like Risley or Sino. They are stellar DPSs, and you're most likely going to get an Electro 5-star support that allows them to do stellar damage without Sandrone, in which case they can be your checks into any stellar conduct mechanics, even if they are much weaker than Sandrone. And we also currently don't really know how bad the stellar shill is going to be, so if it is something that's more manageable, then there is a chance that you may not really need a stellar DPS at all, but going by how Nordcry went, it probably isn't a bad idea to just be safe. TLDR, I feel like pulling for Sandrone right now is a very safe bet. Speaking of pulling Sandrone, we can talk about Columbina. This is also another character that I feel is quite straightforward. Do you have any of the lunar DPSs or supports? You should probably get Columbina. Her role in teams is quite literally just to make lunar gameplay as smooth as possible, with her AoE Hydra application that has a very long uptime, on top of her team-wide lunar damage % buff, on top of the unique buff she gives to lunar teams, with her proc chance increase for reaction, lunar charged, and crystallized damage, as well as giving extra verdant due to lunar bloom teams, so that herself, Nefer, and Llama are all able to use their skills more effectively, without really having to worry about dew management. Columbina is both a massive quality of life and damage boost to these teams, whether you're running her as a support duo to the lunar supports, or just to complete your lunar carries team. If you don't have any of the lunar supports or carries, there isn't technically a reason for you to really have Columbina Columbina, as no other characters in this game really benefit from lunar reactions. Lunar Bloom doesn't even do anything actually if you aren't Nefer, Llama, or Columbina, and even for bypassing any lunar shell mechanics, Columbina alone isn't really enough, as adding a reaction to bypass shill doesn't really work when the team is weak in general. And due to no other character really synergizing with lunar reactions without the lunar support to boost the team's DPS, it's not a smart idea to pull for Columbina as your sole lunar check. I'm not wasting any of your time. TLDR, do you have the lunar units? If yes, pull for Columbina, you can't go wrong. If not, don't do it. She won't be doing that much for you by herself. Do I want to talk about Raiden or Citlali next? Let's talk about Citlali. The goat of Natlin is back and there are hard and soft reasons to get her, and I feel like her position in the meta has become a very interesting one, to where she is a very good unit. It just depends on how far along you are into building your team. But before we get into that, to cover the basics of Citlali, she's a cryo support that reduces the resistance of Pyro and Hydro when a melt or vaporize reaction is triggered, and on top of this, by combining her skill and burst, she's a very consistent cryo applicator, and being from Natlin, it means she's able to hold the Scroll of Cinder City artifact set, which makes her energy requirements more manageable on top of being a great buffing set. Also, being a catalyst user, she has amazing weapon options for buffing, primarily in her signature and Thrilling Tales. Citlali's primary teams are going to be in melt teams. These are her best teams, and are amongst some of the strongest teams in the game, and the best characters to take advantage of that are going to be Arlecchino, Mavwika, Chaska, as well as Durin. Outside of her melt team, she doesn't really shine that much, but because she's a scroll holder which has a very good uptime for how strong of a buff it is, she does end up being a very good slot in Skirk teams too, and her non-burst setups can make her much better than characters like Shenhe, depending on the Stygian lineup. But I wouldn't really recommend pulling Citlali just to be used in Freeze or Skirk teams. And the last main case for Citlali is going to be as a vape support actually, as with Mualani and Mona who just got buffed and can be played as a DPS, since Citlali doesn't apply that much cryo, and cryo only removes half of a pyro aura anyways, there are setups you can do that allows Citlali to buff these units, and she's one of the best at doing so, on top of things like her C2 making her just the definitive best in slot in these teams, so that can be another reason to pick her up. Outside of that, since her last rerun, Citlali has only really gotten Durin as a melt DPS, as well as buffed Mona, but she hasn't really benefited at all from the lunar meta, and with us heading into 7.0 and Citlali hasn't received a buff to make her work in superconduct teams, as well as with the fact that cryo units like Chi-Chi and Diona as cryo sustains got buffed, it's very likely that Citlali won't be any better than she is right now, effectively ending her meta longevity as she most likely will not get a stronger DPS in the future. And even right now, unless you have a dolphined out Citlali melt team, for C0 pyro carries, Overload is just really good, so if you do have something like a C6 Chevreuse and can build into a decent Overload team, it's not like there's a necessity to have Citlali for pyro DPSs, even if I do think pyro DPSs are best with her. But just with the fact that we're able to enter a whole new regions meta, or well, basically the copy and pasted same meta, but with different flagship units and different reactions, I'm not really sure it's worth spending the pulls on Citlali to slightly buff your Mavwika or Arlecchino, when you can easily just spec into an Overload team for them, and save your pulls for the new region that will give you a new, stronger team that will help you bypass the new shell mechanics. So as of right now, there are a lot of units Citlali is good for, like Mavwika, like Chaska, like Arlecchino, like Durin, like Lohen, like Skirk, like Mona, like Mualani, the list goes on. But unless you have the spare pulls or really like your Mavwika, for example, I really feel like you can get by just fine without Citlali. And on the topic of characters you can get by just fine without, Raiden, she's not good. Unless you want to gamble on the fact that she's going to randomly get a buff, there is absolutely zero reason to pull for this character. Raiden is outclassed by almost every single Electro character in this game, whether that's as a support or DPS. There is no Raiden team where she won't just be inferior to another option. Flint can handle anything Hydra related, even without a Nefa or Columbina, and then Varessa and Cloringe just are better than her everywhere. Even if you do happen to get Raiden C2, she's just worse than C0 Electro DPSs right now, and she currently doesn't even really have any supportive qualities to write home about, as Genshin doesn't bake energy issues into any recent characters' kits, and even when a character does have energy issues, your last choice is going to be Raiden. Durin is someone you'd think would be a very relevant character to Raiden, due to the fact that she buffs elemental burst damage, but Razor... Razor is better than Raiden in Durin teams too. The only thing Raiden has going for her is the fact that she's quite comfortable to play due to her being an Omega battery with infinite poise so she can't get staggered, but I really don't think that's enough of a reason to warrant pulling for her when she's just severely outclassed in every team archetype she can be played in. If you want to use Raiden, as I said before, Durin is like the best thing to happen to her in the last 2 years, and you can play decently strong overload teams with her, but outside of that, nothing has really changed that much about Raiden, and it's quite sad. She's one of my favorite units. I really hope there is going to be an Inazuman buff eventually, but she really does have to ride off of the back of the stronger sub DPSs to stay relevant, whether that is with Durin overload teams or alongside the Binefa wheelchair. Now, with all of the characters covered, going from who I think is the most to least valuable, I'm putting Columbina at the top. If you have or are planning on getting any of the lunar supports or DPSs, in this case Columbina would just bring the most value to your account. And then after that, I do think Sandrone is actually quite high value, being the only unit that can enable stellar reactions currently, on top of her most likely rising to be the strongest DPS in the game in a few patches, on top of her supports right now being quite accessible. So as I said before, she's a DPS that you can pick up right now and anyone can get value from her, considering how uncontested her supports are. And then from there we have Citlali, and lastly, I don't even think I need to say it. Now to discuss vertical investment, let's start with Sandrone. Her constellations are really bad. You can see my infographic up here, but getting her signature weapon is about as good as getting both her C1 and C2. So unless you have an 1000 Blazing Sun lying around, there's never a reality where you go for constellations first. The biggest issue with her constellations is while it's a good personal damage increase, it increases Sandrone's field time requirements, making rotations longer, and even doing 2 charge attacks at C1 is slower than 3 charge attacks with C0, which hinders all her future constellations too, and is why I'm calculating by personal DPS and not DPR. So as of right now, get her signature weapon first, and then you can look into constellations. For Columbina, this is the exact opposite situation. She has very good weapons like Fav, Prototype Amber, and Sack Jade from the Battle Pass. Her C1 is a decent damage boost on top of offering a lot of quality of life, and her C2 is just amazing. So if you want to vertically invest into Columbina, you should always look into her constellations. However, if you're pulling Columbina specifically for a lunar carry, like if you wanted to improve your Flynn's or Zebai or Nefer team, before getting Columbina constellations or any vertical investment on her, I would recommend getting vertical investment on the lunar DPSs first, or the supports, and then you look at Columbina constellations last as they're the least impactful. For Citlali, she's a very similar case to Columbina. You just have quite good supportive weapons, and not only that, but Citlali's C1 is better than her weapon anyways, so if you were to get one upgrade, getting the C1 is better, and then Citlali's C2 is actually crack cocaine for any vaporize or melt team, and unlike Columbina is actually similar in power to getting the own DPS's respective constellations. Like C2 Citlali is not that much worse than C2 Malvika or C2 Chaska, so it's not that much worse to go for supportive constellation in my opinion. And lastly, with Raiden, she's also going to follow the constellation route. There are plenty of good weapons for her. Her signature isn't really that great over other weapon options, and then her C1 is in similar power to getting a weapon anyways, with her C2 still being quite decent. So besides comfort, there isn't really a reason to pull for Engulfing Lightning. And that should be everything. So with that, thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to like, subscribe, and comment who you're pulling for in 6.7, as I would love to hear it and I respond to almost every single comment. Channel members, thank you so much for supporting me. I think we got a lot due to my stream, so hello to all the new members, and thank you for being here. Thank you to everyone else who watched the video as well, and I'll see you guys on the flip side. Peace.